case anybody's confused about Tut, yes, it's King Tut.
King Tut. King Tut. Dot, 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 dot. Yep. There we go. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. And Rachel's supposed to be here today, but she's not here at the moment. So if she arrives, we'll see her popping in and we will bring her on board. So today we're talking about, Ian, it was your topic. So what's today?
The supernatural and aspects such as that of Tutankhamun.
Of King Tut and his tomb and the finding of his tomb, which is actually a really cool story. And it got really, really blown out of proportion over the years, but it's still pretty cool. And of course, as we know, multiple movies have been loosely based on the idea of Tut's tomb. I mean, even to go to the extent of the movies The Mummy with Brendan Fraser and
Right.
Rachel Weisz.
Right.
Those films were, I mean, they were fun. I enjoyed watching them. Only the first two. After that, not so much. Let's get into that. But then, yeah, I mean, all of that whole aspect of finding a cursed tomb, right? It's sort of based on the idea of Tut's tomb and what supposedly happened. So we're going to talk about that because that's fun. And then because
And
I'm an archaeologist and I had spent a bunch of years as a gallery interpreter when I was in high school, but also when I was in university at the Royal Ontario Museum in the Egyptology department. So I have quite an extensive background on mummies and Victoria. And
well, there you go. It's right down your alley.
That's it. So we're right down my alley today. So Ian and I will continue. Like I said, if Rachel manages to pop in, we will let her come and visit us. And we're hoping, because she told us she was good for today. So I'm hoping she's just lost track of time, maybe with her kids, because she is doing, they're doing online learning at home. And I can imagine she's got 4 kids. So juggling that every day must be, must be a feat unto itself. So, losing track of time is probably pretty easy. So let's get started, Ian. I mean, you picked this topic because you've got a kind of interesting connection to it. So why don't we kind of lead with that, and then we'll just go from there, wherever it takes us, maybe to Egypt.
All right. Well, anybody who has studied any kind of history at all, or has not lived under a flat rock, or does not live in a pineapple under the sea, you will be aware, most likely, that archaeologist Howard Carter discovered Tutankhamun's tomb intact in Egypt's Valley of the Kings in 1922.
Right.
And the work he was doing was funded by Lord Carnarvon. And this is where my connection comes in, is because I have a distant relative that is connected to the Carnarvon estate in England.
Oh, okay.
And so this story has been told to me down through the generations.
Nice. So is it like broken telephone?
What's that?
Is it like broken telephone?
And as I say, this has gone through generations, and so I'm probably the only one in my family.
There's a true story. We're just not sure exactly.
Yeah, who knows? As I say, it's like the Inuit stories. It's just been told down over and over through the generations. So anyways, my distant relative was the gardener at Lord Carnarvon's British estate.
Okay.
And the story goes is that when they discovered the tomb, opened it up, excavated it, Carnarvon, when he returned to England, he brought with him some dehydrated beans that he had taken from the food cache in the tomb's antechamber. My distant relative gardener took those beans, rehydrated them, planted them, and guess what? They grew.
Ooh. Into a
So,
mummy?
so the curse goes, at least as far as my family is concerned, that by taking these beans, planting them, and having them grow, my family has now been put into the timeline of the curse.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, of course, I personally do not believe in the curse whatsoever. But we joke about it, or we did, as I say. I'm probably the only one who even knows this story anymore because everybody else is dead.
Right. Well,
Not
there
from
you
the
go.
curse,
Hey,
not from the curse,
like,
but
do
we
you know that for sure?
that's true. But we always joked that anytime anything bad happened within the family, is that it was the curse at work. So that is my little family connection to the.
Nice. And we should point out, because I think everybody knows, I shouldn't say everybody, but okay, if you didn't live under a flat rock or a rock of any sort, that Carnarvon was the owner of a very well-known estate. Most people will recognize it as the main home on Downton Abbey, Highclere, because Highclere Castle was indeed Lord Carnarvon's estate. So for anybody out there who's seen Downton Abbey but once, you've definitely seen the castle slash manor house, whatever you want to call it. Great big, fancy, quite elaborate home. So clearly he had a couple of dollars there.
Yeah, he did all right.
And, just to kind of get into the story, because it's really interesting. It wasn't Lord Carnarvon himself who discovered Tut. And, I've heard so many variations of this story over the years and people talking about it. And, we sort of should set the record straight on that. He funded the dig.
He was the
But,
financier. That's right.
and he was on the site, of course, but he was not an archaeologist, and he wasn't physically involved in the actual unearthing of this tomb. His money went into it. His daughter did do a little bit of work there, I understand, on the site, but it was really Howard Carter who was sort of the key component to this, because without Carter having accidentally discovered this shaft, we wouldn't even have, I shouldn't say we wouldn't, somebody may have found Tut over the next 100 years, but we wouldn't really, be telling this story today, right? It would be a very different story. So at the time too, I want to point out, because if you've watched any movies, any mini series, anything depicting this excavation of Tut's tomb, they always, sort of purvey Howard as a man who looks to be in his 30s or maybe even early 40s. But he was only 17 when he discovered this tomb. That was it, 17. He was a teenager.
Was he that young, really?
Yes, he was
17. I didn't know that.
And he was working. His father got him a job as an archaeologist. This was before you had to spend, 3 minimum to 5 to 7 years in school for archaeology. But I always feel with archaeology anyways, learning on the job has way more I guess, impact on what you do than sitting in a classroom, being shown a bunch of diagrams and layers of soil and learning all of that stuff. I mean, I went through all that stuff, right? The history side of it, all of those things. But being on an actual dig is really different from being in the classroom. So I think that, being in the classroom is great if you want to go on to a PhD and you want to teach and you want to do those kinds of things. But I think as anybody who's interested in archaeology, just sign yourself up as a volunteer on a site. They are always looking for volunteers, and it's a great way to learn. You learn a lot from field work. I think a lot more than you do just sitting in the classroom listening to the the talking. So Carter was 17. His dad got him a job working in the Valley